On va enchaîner maintenant avec Wenonah Campbell, qui vient du Canada et qui va nous présenter un programme éducatif qui s'appelle Partnering for Change, qu'elle a mené dans l'État de l'Ontario. Et bien la voilà, on vous souhaite la bienvenue au Parlement européen de Strasbourg et on vous laisse la parole pour une vingtaine de minutes à peu près pour présenter vos travaux et vos actions. Bienvenue à vous.
Hello, thank you. It's a pleasure to be able to share with you today research from Canada. My name is Wenonah Campbell. I'm presenting today on behalf of the Partnering for Change research team, which is located at McMaster University in Ontario, Canada. I'm an associate professor at McMaster University and the lead researcher on the Partnering for Change team. Next slide, please. So my talk today is going to be organized around 5 key questions. First, I want to tell you what Partnering for Change, or P4C, is, and then I'll share how the model has evolved over time. Next, I'll tell you about what difference P4C makes based on research. And I'll also highlight how and where P4C is currently being used. And finally, I'll share how you can learn more or consider applying this service model in your own context. Next slide, please. So to understand what P4C is, you have to know how it got its start. It began in Ontario, Canada, in the mid-2000s, where key partners, including families, therapists, educators, administrators, and policymakers, came together around a shared concern. At the time, children with developmental coordination disorder were the largest group being referred for occupational therapy services in schools in Ontario. And they were experiencing significant delays in accessing support. Wait lists in Ontario were often years long, with some children finishing elementary school without ever being seen. During that time, as highlighted by our prior speaker, many students were becoming increasingly frustrated, and secondary physical and mental health concerns were beginning to emerge. So in response, these partners worked collaboratively through a series of meetings and discussions and an initial pilot study to say what would be a more effective way of providing services in schools. And it's from this collaborative process that the model Partnering for Change was developed. Next, I'll describe what P4C is. Next slide, please. P4C is a school-based model of occupational therapy service that focuses on supporting children within their everyday school environments: the gym, the playground, the classroom, the hallway, lunchroom. And it was developed in response to the challenges I just described and that our prior speaker spoke about. And it really rethinks how services are delivered. First, P4C aims to improve equitable access to services so that support is based on children's needs and not on their position on a wait list. Second, the model focuses on children's functioning and participation at school, supporting their involvement in everyday activities such as learning, play, and social interaction. Third, and quite importantly, P4C emphasizes building capacity in people, not only in children, but also among families and educators, so that those people who support children in their daily contexts are better equipped to support their needs. And finally, the model supports inclusive education, with services provided within the classroom whenever possible, rather than separating children, removing them from the class, and taking them away from their peers. These are the key aims of P4C. The next image shows how the model is structured. Next slide, please. This image shows the structure of the Partnering for Change model, and I'll briefly walk you through its key elements. If you start with the outer circle, this represents the key partners in the model: educators, children, families, and therapists. P for C is built on collaboration between these groups, with occupational therapists working in partnership with educators and families within children's everyday school environments. Inside the circle is a triangle that shows 3 levels of service. At the base are universal services, which support all children. At this level, occupational therapists collaborate with educators to build inclusive classroom environments and support participation for all students. In the middle are targeted services, which provide short-term support for children who need additional help in specific areas, sometimes delivered in small groups. At the top are individualized services, which is for children who require the most support, with services that are more intensive and tailored to the individual child. As you move up the triangle, services become more intensive, but fewer children require these higher levels of support, making the structure of the model equitable. The model is also flexible, meaning children can receive services at multiple levels or enter at any level depending on their needs. At the base of the triangle are 2 key pillars: relationship building and knowledge sharing, which are essential across all levels and support collaboration and capacity building within the school community. Decisions about the level of service are made collaboratively, based on how children are participating in their everyday school activities, with supports matched to need and adjusted over time. Overall, the model combines a tiered structure with flexibility to support participation and inclusion for all children in school. Next slide, please. Now that I have shared what P for C is, I want to talk a little about the program of research that underpins P for C and how that research has evolved over time, especially as it pertains to the children who can benefit from P for C. So you'll see in the timeline that it starts around 2008 and carries through to present day. Over that time, we began with pilot studies and small studies to see how P for C might work, and those studies grew progressively larger over time, with involving more schools, more children, more therapists, and changed in focus from looking at the effectiveness of P for C to studying its real-world implementation. As we did this, we also changed the focus of who P for C could help. In the initial studies, we focused on children with DCD, who we knew weren't getting the support they needed at school. But interestingly, we kept getting feedback during those studies, hearing from educators and therapists, that P for C could actually help other children too, and that they wondered if it would be an effective model for children with DCD and children with other conditions like ADHD, autism, learning disabilities, and so on. So in 2013 to 15, we studied that, and we looked at, let's recruit children with any type of condition and see if P for C is helpful. And the evidence that we found and have published suggests that indeed P for C can help all children, regardless of their need, if they need occupational therapy support. And that in fact, this was a more inclusive model because it could actually involve all children at school. And when you think about educators and families and students, it's really important that supports are getting to everyone. So we could help children with DCD, but others too. And it helped with comorbidities. It didn't matter if you had other conditions. It didn't matter if you had a diagnosis or not. P4C could be there for support. So since that time, all our studies have looked at how P4C can support the entire school community. Next slide, please. So considering this collective research and the work of others, evidence shows that Partnering for Change does make a meaningful difference in how occupational therapy support is provided in schools. One key finding is that P4C strengthens partnerships between educators and therapists, enabling them to work together more effectively to support students. By embedding occupational therapy services within daily school routines, support becomes a natural part of the classroom experience. It's no longer therapy that's delivered outside of the real school context. Because occupational therapists are regularly present in schools, they are able to identify students' emerging needs earlier and begin support sooner, including for children with DCD, and this can benefit children in the long term. We also have documented repeatedly that the model helps reduce and eliminate wait lists for service by offering flexible tiered support that reaches more students more quickly. And we've also heard from families that they report feeling reassured, knowing that their children are being supported proactively within the classroom and through a collaborative approach. Next slide, please. So I wanted to share some examples of where P4C is making a difference. Starting on the left side, I have a clipping from a newspaper article from about 10 years ago, featured in our local newspaper in Hamilton, Ontario. And it was talking about how P4C was making a difference in some local schools in the Hamilton area. We kept doing research, we kept collaborating with partners, and in the next image, the one that shows the pyramid, that is a screenshot from the Ontario government guidelines for how rehabilitation services are delivered in Ontario, and is from 2022. And it shows that in large part based on research conducted by our team and others, that a tiered model is now the way that services are delivered in Ontario. And while it's not always exactly the P4C model, P4C is cited as an exemplar of the kind of service that can be provided. In the middle screenshot with the purple bar, that's a screenshot I took just 2 weeks ago from one of our children's treatment centers that delivers occupational therapy services in schools. They now deliver P4C as their standard model of service. The next image is a screenshot from an op-ed piece in Further Education News from the United Kingdom that was published just last month, where Partnering for Change was cited as an example of best practice and what works, and encouraged the UK government to consider P4C in its reforms to special education. And in the last screenshot is an article published in 2025 by a group from Sweden who are examining the use of P4C in their schools, one of several articles that have been published by groups other than our own in the last few years. So this slide shows a map of where Partnering for Change and tiered service models are being used. The map is Canada, and the blue shows places that are using Partnering for Change, and the green is showing examples of provinces that use tiered models that share similarities with Partnering for Change. So in a lot of Canada, these are the models guiding how services are provided in schools. We also see a list of countries to the left. Several of those countries either have done their own research using Partnering for Change or have contacted our team about supporting the use of Partnering for Change in their regions. So clearly, P4C is gaining momentum. Next slide, please. This shows a website that is available in both English and French that we produced based on our most recent research. It highlights the conditions under which Partnering for Change works best and how it can lead to positive outcomes. It's designed to support people in learning about P4C and includes many implementation tools and guidance to help people apply it in their own context. You can access the site by using the QR code or going to p4cguide.com, and you can select to view the website in either English or French. Next slide, please. I will now show a short video with French captions that introduces the website and all of what's available as part of it. Please launch the video.
The Partnering for Change team is thrilled to share our research findings and resources with everyone interested in learning more about P4C. Alongside our published research, we've developed courses, webinars, and implementation tools to support you on your P4C journey. But that's not all. We've also developed the online P4C Guide for Success, an evidence-based, step-by-step guide to help you build a solid P4C foundation, because simply reading about theory might not be enough to support implementation. Our research has identified several key ingredients for successfully implementing P4C. These elements are interrelated and contextually dependent. They rely on true partnerships between administrators, educators, children and families, and occupational therapists. The guide helps to illuminate what is at the heart of the P4C implementation theory: collaboration. The P4C Guide for Success includes clear visualizations of key components of the P4C implementation theory, videos that share insights and impact, and a rich repository of resources to continue your learning. To access the guide and deepen your understanding of P4C, explore our website at p4cguide.com.
So that video gives you a brief overview of the website and how it can support implementation of P4C. Since its release in March of 2025, the guide has been accessed by over 2,000 visitors from 73 countries. And this suggests growing international interest in P4C and its application across different contexts. In addition to the website, our team has also published structured resources for therapists who want to learn in greater detail about delivering tiered service models, including P4C. Specifically, there are 2 free online courses available on McMaster University's MacHealth platform, open to anyone, anywhere in the world. The first course, shown in blue, is designed for occupational therapists, speech-language pathologists, and physiotherapists. It provides a general introduction to tiered service delivery and is available in English. It is also supported by a downloadable knowledge implementation toolkit and a frequently asked questions guide, both also in English. The P4C Professional Development Program is designed specifically for occupational therapists who wish to implement Partnering for Change. It's available in both English and French. Since 2023, these resources have been accessed by users from 68 countries, with over 3,400 registered users and more than 14,000 page views, which further suggests that P4C is not only relevant in Canada, but is increasingly being explored and applied internationally. Next slide, please. So that brings me to the end of my talk today. Today I've described what P4C is, how it's evolved over time, the difference it can make, and how it's being used and shared more broadly. Overall, P4C offers a flexible, needs-based, and collaborative approach to supporting all children's participation in school. At its core, P4C is about building capacity in others and bringing support into everyday school life so that all children can be included, participate, and succeed. Thank you for your attention. I would now be happy to take questions.
Est-ce qu'il y a des questions? Je propose de lever la main.
Oui, je voulais savoir comment le P4C s'articulait avec l'autorégulation qui est assez, je crois, aussi développée en Ontario.
So, one of the things our research shows is it is important to have regulations that support inclusive education, and we have published information on that. In Canada, most students with disabilities are educated in general education classrooms. Some schools will still have designated classrooms for students with certain kinds of needs, but we do not have separate school systems for students with disabilities. So absolutely, it's helpful if your context has an inclusive education system. But with that, we do know that for schools that have, for example, dedicated classrooms for children with specific disabilities, that Partnering for Change can also work there, and that occupational therapists do often collaborate with special education teachers, as well as teachers who are instructing students in mainstream or regular education classrooms. So the occupational therapist who's in the school would be able to provide self-regulation support if that's needed. So they are the therapists for the school. They're assigned to a school, and they would spend either a full day a week or ideally a full day a week or 1 day every 2 weeks, and they could address any needs that are there. So there's no restriction on what supports they could provide. They could address self-regulation, they could address fine motor, they could address self-care, social interaction, whatever the needs of that school and of the children are. So in Ontario, we don't have any restrictions on a therapist, for example, only being able to provide certain kinds of support in the school system.
Oui, ce dispositif évoque le fonctionnement dans certains instituts d'éducation motrice où nous avons des enfants qui peuvent avoir aussi des éléments de dyspraxie bien connus et où effectivement les différents rééducateurs interviennent au sein des classes spécialisées et construisent avec les enseignants des objectifs de progression, autant sur le plan des apprentissages strictement scolaires qu'une évolution plus globale. Est-ce que vous savez s'il y a eu des études comparatives, puisque ces modèles, en tout cas en France, existent depuis très longtemps? Bien sûr, il s'agit d'un enseignement dans un milieu spécialisé, même si l'enseignement peut lui être un cursus ordinaire tel que le bac. Merci.
So I'm not sure what the question is. I think my translation cut out for a bit. But in terms of different people providing support, within the school setting, the occupational therapist would collaborate with all members of the school team. So if there were different people within the school system supporting children, the OT is becoming a part of the in-school support system. Then within Ontario, there are regulations that would require therapists and professionals who work within school to collaborate or organize their services with therapists and health professionals in the health system or in the rehabilitation system. So if you have different organizations and different groups of health professionals, we have legislation saying they need to collaborate on their different supports so that if something's happening over here, it's not interfering with what's happening there. In reality, I will say even our own research says that while there's legislation saying that, in practice, that coordination can be very challenging, and there can still be gaps and overlaps in service. And what we see is that usually the families, unfortunately, bear the burden of coordinating those many systems and ensuring that all those different people who touch their children's lives are working together. And there is certainly work we've been part of to try and highlight the need for the system to provide that coordination and not to leave that on the shoulders of families. It is a very unfair burden.
Florence Marchal, je suis médecin de rééducation en région parisienne et ça fait quelques années que je me passionne pour le P4C et on a un programme pilote dans des écoles du département du 94. Je rebondis un peu sur l'échange récent, non pas pour poser une question, mais pour donner ma compréhension de cette proposition. Je crois ce qui est révolutionnaire dans l'approche du P4C par rapport à ce qu'on connaît de l'approche thérapeutique en France, c'est que ça n'est pas, en tout cas pour le bas de la pyramide, pour les premières étapes du dispositif, ça n'est pas une prestation individuelle, c'est une prestation systémique, collective. Ça, c'est quelque chose auquel on n'est pas du tout habitué. Et ça peut marcher, si on se souvient dans la pyramide que Wenonah nous a montrée, il y a deux piliers qui sont la transmission de connaissances, donc les soignants apprennent de la réalité des enseignants de cette classe-là, dans cette école-là, qui ne va pas être la même réalité que l'école dans le département d'à côté ou de la rue d'à côté. Et les enseignants apprennent des soignants la spécificité d'approche de certains profils de développement qui sont mal connus par eux. Donc il y a vraiment une transmission de connaissances. Et l'autre pilier, c'est le partage vraiment des échanges de collaboration. Et pour ça, il faut du temps. Et ces deux, et il faut être présent dans l'école. Et ces deux piliers, on n'y est pas du tout familier dans notre système éducatif français. Je crois que c'est vraiment ça la révolution. Mais on peut avoir quand même de l'espoir parce que cette pyramide qui n'est pas utilisée que dans le P4C, cette approche par niveau, par palier, où il y a l'approche universelle, et puis ceux qui résistent à cette approche universelle bénéficient d'une approche par petits groupes, et puis ceux qui résistent, ils bénéficient d'une approche encore plus thérapeutique individuelle. Elle devient de plus en plus préconisée. Elle montre, on en a besoin dans le système économique dans lequel tous nos pays sont aujourd'hui, c'est-à-dire qu'elle montre que collectivement, d'année en année, l'école a moins d'enfants en difficulté. Ce qui fait que les enfants qui ont vraiment des troubles sévères, ils accèdent plus facilement aux thérapeutes qui sont libérés des autres. Et donc on voit vraiment dans les études, notamment à l'étranger, pas en France, mais qu'il y a vraiment une progression collective et du coup un bénéfice individuel pour les enfants les plus sévèrement gênés. Et donc quand même ce qui fait cette progression par palier, elle est préconisée. Là, il y a un article qui est sorti sur le Conseil scientifique de l'éducation nationale. Il concerne les apprentissages de la lecture, mais il dit exactement ça. Donc, il faut y aller. Moi, je pense qu'il faut y aller. Voilà, je ne pouvais pas m'empêcher d'en parler. Merci.
I don't think I could say it any better than you said it. I think you are very much correct. The pyramid structure that I discussed, we actually looked to education for that. So when we were developing the P4C model back in the mid-2000s, our thinking was that if we're going to provide services that work well in school, we need to not bring in health or medical models into the school system. We need to look at what are educators doing, how are they supporting students. And so that tiered structure is very much present in education systems called response to intervention. And it very likely is the model in your learning to read report or initiative that you mentioned. And it's a way of ensuring that even when children don't have diagnoses or are not identified, people don't recognize they have difficulties, which of course is very true for children with DCD. They are often not diagnosed or recognized, and people often don't understand why they're struggling. And so the idea of the universal support, so making environments accessible, making learning accessible, making system change in the school system, supporting teachers to know how to educate children who have disabilities and a range of needs. That's really where that comes from, is it ensures that children are being supported regardless of whether or not they're identified. Of course, it can still be and is helpful to identify children who have DCD, and many children with DCD will need additional support, but it at least addresses the issue of having an environment in the school system that isn't accessible or welcoming or flexible. And so it really is looking at inclusion as the foundation of your service, rather than thinking of it as I have to identify you first and assess you and know you have a diagnosis before I help you. It's really proactive.
Très bien. Pas d'autres questions. On va remercier Wenonah Campbell. Merci infiniment pour votre intervention, toutes vos explications, d'avoir répondu à nos questions.